morning. It is a wet, beautiful morning in East Tennessee, and I am ready to go back to bed. This morning I'm going to be doing some art. I haven't done art in a little while. I've been feeling kind of funky about art, and but I really wanted to have something that was sort of like break me out of my morning mold. I've been feeling kind of like my morning walk is interfering with my morning energy, and I love my morning walk, but I'm such a productive person in the early hours of the morning, and that's when I did a lot of work during the winter when I don't go for a morning walk. And so, I don't know, I'm struggling with that, like get up in the morning and do art, or get up in the morning and go for a walk. And I know I can do both. I can get up in the morning, go for a walk, come home, do art, but then by the time I get home, I'm so hungry, I just want to sit down and eat and veg for a while. And then I have like camp work to do and argh work to do, which those are our events that we do 3 times a year, in case you don't know that. But I don't know, just feeling like my mornings are a little weird right now. Anyway, so I have a lot on my mind. Scotty and I watched this movie last night called, I'm probably not going to pronounce this correctly, Bokeh. I don't know, it's Bokeh. It's this couple, and they're on a vacation in Iceland, which, if you know me, I'm kind of obsessed with Iceland and the Faroe Islands and the Shetland Islands. I love all that stuff. And so anything that has to do with the islands there, I'm really interested in. So we watched this movie last night, and basically this couple, they're on vacation, and they wake up in the morning, something happens that's not really explained, and this isn't like a spoiler or anything like that. It says it in the description of the movie on Netflix. But everyone's disappeared. Like, everyone. Just gone. All the people are gone. Everyone's gone. And so it's kind of a quiet movie, and it's really beautiful. Of course, it's Iceland, and there's the glaciers and these beautiful springs, and it's just it's beautiful. But these two people they're just like trying to figure out what their purpose in life is now. And the wife, or the girlfriend, she's struggling more, and the guy is like, it doesn't matter, let's just live. But it just made me think about so many things. And you have that where you think about, oh, what if I was the only person left on Earth? Or what if it was just me and Scotty? We're the only people in the world, and what would we do? And what would that feel like? And I don't know, it really got me thinking a lot, and I could hardly go to sleep last night because I was thinking so much about it. About like how much of our identity and who we are is tied up with the ego, and I'm not even sure how to put it into words, but with who we are in relation to other people, and what we do for them or what they do for us, and our interactions with other people, like whether you are in a service industry or a creative person. I don't know, it's just there's all this back and forth and give and take of our relationships with people that make up who we are, and like what would happen to our identity and our sense of self if we just really knew we were absolutely alone in the world, and like how would that change who we are and what we do. And I don't know, just really thinking about it so much. Like, who do I want to be, and the kinds of things that we spend our time doing, like how much stuff we waste time on, like, scrolling through Facebook or, Instagram, or, social media in general. We spend so much time on that, and what could we be doing instead? And so I started imagining, okay, what would I do if I found myself alone in the world? And I was like, okay, well, first of all, if there was that scenario where everybody just disappeared, and you could just go and you could get a bunch of food and go to whatever house you wanted to live in, and just live there. I was just like, what would I do? I was like, okay, I would stock up a lot of food. I would find a house that I really, really liked, and just stay there and start doing a garden that was like my ideal garden, not one that's limited to the fact that I'm renting a house, which kind of makes me less gung-ho with like just making this huge, beautiful garden, because there's always like, what if we move, or all these other excuses, and that's why just this idea of having a garden where it just takes over everything, the entire yard, everything, and really, really grow everything that you need, so that when your stockpiles run out, you're fine, and learning how to can, and all of that self-sufficiency stuff. It's like, okay, well, if that's what I would do if I were the only person in the world, it's like, what's keeping me from doing that now? So I guess it's the same kind of question as, what would you be doing with your life if money wasn't an issue? That kind of helps you figure out what you really truly want to do. And sometimes that doesn't help you do it, but it can give you a clearer idea of what you really enjoy. I don't know. I'm just in a thinky thought place. And so anyway, I had to get on customer service with Verizon this morning, because my phone SIM card is like, something is wrong with it, but it doesn't affect my phone. It just affects my ability to see my phone information on my account online. It's really not a big deal. But anyway, that kind of like derailed my plans for this morning a little bit as far as getting started. And I don't know, it just made me feel like I'm doing this first before doing art, and just kind of sharing where my mental space is. So now I probably won't have anything to talk about while I do art. I have a banana, and I thought, okay, what would make me feel a little bit better, and a little bit more connected to here? Because sometimes when you have to like talk to customer service of any kind, or sort of deal with things that take you away from your daily life, I don't know, I feel like that there's this need to come back and be grounded again. And so to take away that mental attention that went to dealing with customer service, which they were really great. It was not a bad experience. It was just distracting for my plans for this morning. So I thought, what will make me feel like getting back into the swing of things? And I thought, well, being outside, and it's kind of wet, so I'm sitting on a towel. But I wanted to be outside, and I wanted to go into the garden and kind of look at it and maybe share a little bit about that. So before I do any artbang, I'm going to go into the garden. I'm going to roll my pajamas because the grass is wet and I don't want to get my pants wet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go into the garden for a little bit, and I'm going to bring you with me, and just for a few minutes, and show you around. And I'm going to eat my banana also. This is my banana. Let's go. If anyone knows what this bush is, please tell me. It's so beautiful. I don't know if you can like even grasp how big it is. It's just so big. But it's just covered in these beautiful purple flowers, and they always look kind of pink on the camera. Yeah, they look pink through the viewer, but they're really actually purple. So it's big and beautiful, and I love it. And it's one of the last things to flower in our yard, I think. When we first moved in, it was just this big bush, and I was like, what is this? And it looked dead for the longest time, because we moved into this house in December. And so I just thought it was this dead thing, and it didn't even get leaves for the longest time. And then one day I saw little buds on it, and I was like, is it going to be something awesome? And it is. And it's huge. I love it. Okay. So this is my peace place of grounding, literally getting my feet in the ground, on the ground, in the grass. And usually just come out and start looking and seeing if there's anything new. Lots of squash blossoms. So one thing I noticed, okay, you can see the difference in the leaves, right? Okay, this is zucchini squash, and that is summer squash. But I noticed, and maybe I can show you, that it's actually getting zucchini on this one. The other one is getting the yellow summer squash, but it's in here somewhere. Yeah, but they don't look so good. So I don't know. I'm not sure what's happening. I'll just wait and see. And the potatoes, got to cover those up with dirt again. They're doing great. Watermelon, got some little flower, and lots of little romas. The beans. Now these are supposed to be bush beans, but there is one plant that I think is confused. It thinks it's a vining bean. So, I don't know. We'll just see. But lots of little flowers going on there. Giant pepper. Lots of tomatoes. The cucumbers. Got some flowers on them. We won't spend too much time out here because I really want to get to work. But the peas, oh, look how they're growing up. These are really pretty little flowers. Look at them. Very purple also. Just little, really, really unusual flowers that they get. And I picked the Swiss chard and kale and spinach, and that was really good. We cooked half of it, and then the other went into like a chopped salad, and that was really great to be able to eat that. And now it's time to harvest the lettuce. Probably do that. I was going to do it, but I decided I had enough greens and for us to eat, and I don't want to pick them until we can eat them. Don't want them to go bad. And look at this cilantro. It's doing great. This one is not doing so great. And I think it's because there is an ant colony living right down in there. Look at that. And so I think they're kind of killing that particular cilantro. But the dill, look at the dill. It's awesome. Anyway, so I'm feeling a little bit more centered. Feels good to come outside and listen to the birds and eat my banana. So, I'm gonna go inside and do some art. That's loud. Everyone's in bed. Except Scotty. Taking you for a little mini tour through the house. All right, want to just bear with me while I set the camera up here. This is what I'm going to be working on. And let's see. Can't squash and zucchini cross-pollinate, make some hybrid. Yeah, that can happen. And that's fine. I think it'll all taste good no matter what. So this is what I'm going to be working on. I had thought that I might work on this because this kind of is exciting to me, this particular sculpture, but I'm not really sure what I want to do with that. So I'm just going to stick with what I'm sure about. I'm adjusting my tripod. Sorry about that, making you all shake all over, all two of you. I wish there was a way to pause this. I know on the Facebook live stream you can pause and whatnot, but anyway. So I'm going to get to work on this, and I do need to eat my banana because I haven't really had anything else today yet, and I don't want to crash. So I've got this set up. Got some light here. Hopefully that's enough light to see. Alrighty. And so I'm just going to work on this section. Put it as much in the light as I can. There we go. Dropping pins everywhere over here. Alright, so if you've not watched one of these with me before, I will kind of do a little bit of an intro. So this is a knotted tapestry. At least that's what I call it. I call it a knotted tapestry because I really don't have any other name for it. Textiles. It's a macrame technique, but when I look at it, it doesn't scream macrame art to me. So not that there's anything wrong with macrame art. I love that stuff. I love the traditional macrame wall hangings and planters and all that stuff. I grew up with that kind of thing. My mom used to make those. She used to do those table, like the hanging glass table with the macrame work that, went from the ceiling to the floor. Those were pretty cool. Complete 70s. Anyway, so when I think of macrame, that's what I think of. So I don't necessarily call this macrame art, but it really is, because you're doing basically a clove hitch. That's all it is, a clove hitch over and over again, every single bit of this. And the thing is taking that one technique. It's just like with any art, you have a technique, right? You learn a technique, whether it's watercolor or welding, which is what I used to do when I was in school, which I miss very much. But, you learn a technique, and then you take that technique and you put your own spin on it, you do your own thing. That's why not all art looks the same, because even if two people are using the exact same technique, it's going to come out to be two completely different things. This particular string has gotten really short, so I'm just going to pull it in here. Look, see, it broke off already. I'm going to pull it in this way and just continue knotting. So I had the opportunity to talk with my friend Jennifer when her and her kids were in town for my other friend Emily's birthday. They came into town, and I did a little DJing for the birthday party, and it was a lot of fun. But I had an opportunity to talk to Jennifer. She's also an artist, and we talked a lot about process and what that means, and how sometimes procrastinating on things will have a different outcome than doing things when you should. I don't know. There are some benefits to procrastination, and there are some not so great benefits, like having to rush at the last minute. So I talked about how the two pieces that I did when it was crunch time back at the end of January, getting ready for the February show, and I had procrastinated a little bit, and I was also working on another piece that was for something different, which also ended up going in the show, but it's that won't be in a show until September. So anyway, I was trying to get that finished because it originally had a February deadline, but I got it done, and then I wanted to do some other work, and so for the February show, and so I was like trying to get these last two pieces completed by the deadline, and it was just like, I worked in a very different way than I do when I don't have a deadline. And I don't know, something about having the deadline, and I can't remember what the quote is, that it's very, motivating to have a deadline. But I work very differently and more focused, and it's like I give myself permission to not be interrupted, and I give myself permission to kind of ignore some other things, in a way that's, I'm still present, because I do have to take Sadie to work and, make food and stuff like that. But for the most part, my kids are old enough, if they're hungry, they just, they go make something themselves. It's not like when they were little. When they were little, I didn't do a lot, because it's a lot harder to, as a lot of mom artists know, it's hard to divide yourself between those two passions of being a mother and being an artist. And so that's not really the hard part about, giving myself permission to totally immerse myself in the process. It's more of a, I don't know, it's a mental thing where you have to, just the idea of giving yourself permission to be totally immersed in something. It just seems like having a deadline is the only time when I really, really do that. And I allow myself to be much more distracted by other things when I don't have a deadline. like now, I don't have any upcoming shows. I don't have any orders or anything like that. Not that I usually do, but I mean, if I did, that would be a deadline. I don't know, it just changes your focus a little bit. And so anyway, the last two pieces that I did are the only ones from that particular show that I sold. And it's not like, oh, those
that must mean that you produce better work or whatever under pressure or anything like that. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes you do. Some people do. But I think it's just that they were the culmination of experience and learning and getting better at whatever it is that this technique or this particular art is, So, I don't know. That was a good conversation, and it's just been it was soul-filling to have. And so just kind of rambling and nodding. So I'm thinking a lot about process and art and trying to stay in the camera view. Okay. So what I'm doing right now is, like I said, it is the same exact knot over and over and over again. And I've got this set up, my camera. Normally when I've done this in the past, I've set the camera up to flip the other direction and I can't see my screen. But I've set it up to where I can see the screen. So if anybody hops on here and asks a question or whatever, and I look up, I'll be able to see it and answer it. So anyway, this is basically, you have your core, which this core is really big because I've been collecting all of the strings down here as opposed to, leaving them hanging down like you see here. Like when you make a knot, you can leave them down or you can gather them into the core. And so it just depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish with that section. So right here, I wanted to close it off and I didn't want to have any more going on. So they're all gathered into the core to make this little ropey section here. You will know if you've seen these before that ropey section is a technical term that I use. Ropey section. And when you have when you don't have a really thick core and you just have one string, like right now I'm doing, coming across here, you can see this is the exact same thing as this. It's the exact same technique, but because of how I'm using it and the fact that it has multiple threads in the center, it creates a different effect. Whereas this will create more of a weaving look to it, where it will look like more of a textile. And the outer sections create more of a sculptural, dimensional feel because they are thicker. And so this is the knot. It's just, as you can see, that's it, over and over again. So when people say, what's your technique, or how'd you learn this, it's just over time. I used to do hemp bracelets, hemp necklaces, and things like that. I learned it out of a hemp jewelry book. And then my sculpture background, which is what I studied for 4 years of a 5-year program. So no, I did not complete that program at ETSU. I don't know what I was saying. Talking and art, it's a weird thing. It's like driving and talking. If you've ever been in a car with me and I start talking, you'll notice that I start slowing down a lot. I drive really slow when I start talking. Okay. I wish this showed how long we were on here. It doesn't show how long I've been yammering. So I'm thinking about this piece and where do I want it to go? Do I want it to be big? Do I want to bring it all together and finish it off and make it be more square? Because I don't really have any work right now that fits into sort of a square format. Not the actual work itself. Obviously, it's not square. It's very circular. But I don't have anything that's in a square format. I have, it's usually like this. This. And then, of course, like that. But nothing really small and square. I have a piece that I finished here that might fit into like a square frame. I'm going to make the frame for that soon. And then this. Oh, this reminds me of one of the things that Jennifer and I were talking about. We were talking about your idea for how something will turn out and how sometimes the process will dictate a different outcome, or, you know, different things happen when you're working on something that makes it to where you end up doing the final piece is different than what you thought it would be. And obviously that happens a lot with art, but specific reasons, like with that piece that I just showed, that really bright one, that I had intended to be really big and very different. But because of the materials I was using were some that was given to me last year by one of my camp staff. It's like a really old rug yarn, and I had sorted through it and got all the stuff that I needed and thought that I had a lot more, but it ended up that while I was working on it, I started running out of the black, and it's not something I could replace and just go out and buy more of. So if I were to even just use a regular acrylic black yarn, it wouldn't work. It would throw it all off. So I had to, midway through working on it, I had to rethink how it was going to turn out. Good morning. Someone's awake. So I had to rethink how it was going to turn out. And that can be a little frustrating, but it also challenges you to think differently and work through the process in a way that you hadn't originally planned. And maybe you'll learn something new, and maybe you will find out that the direction that you have to go in now because of, for whatever reason, that you like even more. I don't know. There's just a lot of things that can dictate the outcome of a piece. Another thing, I think I was talking with Flo, Silas's girlfriend Flo. We're talking about art and creativity. She's a musician. I think it was Flo that I was having this conversation with in the car, which made me drive slow. And talking about art and how the outcome, the final piece, is really just a snapshot. It's not really the actual art, and that the art is everything that went into making the final piece. It's everything, obviously. And I think that that's something that I thought that a lot of artists have about their work, that the final piece is just this, it's just like a picture, even if it is a picture, but it's just like a snapshot of a representation, a physical representation of the process of the art. It's hard to put that into words, but I think if you do art or anything creative, and when I say anything creative, I mean anything creative, like baking bread, making a home, anything, it's just creative pursuits. I think that a lot of creative people have that same feeling about process versus final art that you make, that so much of it is the actual process. That's where the art is in the process. So anyway, right here I am, as you can see, I'm starting to close up this section. I'm bringing it into a sort of a V here. And as I do that, what I do is I bring these strings, as it used to be so many more, I bring those into this section here to narrow this, and it gets smaller and smaller to where it will eventually be together like that. So that's what I'm doing right now. Trying to work that. And you don't want to do it too fast. Like you can, depending on what you want, like you can make an extreme arc by jumping really fast from a few strings to several. Like here, you've got this nice arc that goes like that. So I had just a few strings and then jumping up to a lot more. And if I want to have a gradual curve, so I don't want to take away the strings too fast. As you can see, a lot of these strings are really close together, and Sometimes I just use one string, but because I have so many and they're so close together, I'm using more than one to do the center core strings. Did you see what I just did? That's a mistake. Got carried away. I just used one of the strings up here as a knotter instead of a core string. Oops. Alright, so that's easily undone. I just get that back over there. So since I did all my talking, thinking on the porch this morning, got that all out of my system so that I could focus on art talk and art doing. I feel like I don't really have anything else to say, but I am still very much in that mental space of thinking about who am I? Who am I without the reflection that I see in the world? Because there are other people. And I am very much a recluse, a little bit of a hermit. What is the difference between a recluse and a hermit? I don't know. But I do like to keep to myself. I like to be home pretty much all the time. And so I think about, if it were just me, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I think there's definitely a difference between choosing to be home by yourself and knowing that you're the only person in the world. Very, very different feeling that has. And what it would evoke and what it would mean as far as, who I am in the world. So, I don't know. Sometimes I'll get these thoughts in my head and they won't go away until I really process them completely. But it did give me one thing, really important thing to think a lot about, and which I've been doing anyway for the past couple of months, is kind of paying more attention to time spent on social media. Like, on the one hand, I really love the idea of having social media and building up like sort of an online community, which is another really interesting thing that I think about when it comes to community, because you have your real life community, which I have in the past few years I've become a little distanced from my real life community. But I think something, especially when you're sort of introverted, that even if you just do a minimal amount of social media each day, it's like it satisfies that little small part of you that does desire social interaction. So real world social interaction doesn't feel as urgent. Like, I've already done my socializing for the day online, so there's no pull really as much to get out and be around other people. Shit, look what I did. Y'all didn't hear me say that. So I just broke a string. That's okay, because it started right here. So that's another thing that I've been thinking a lot about, is how social media satisfies that's very small social desire, and how it sort of makes it even less desirable to get out and about, because you don't need it as much, that it's been fulfilled. So anyway, I've been trying to be more conscious of how much I use social media, but I also really want to have a really thriving community on Instagram and YouTube. So, I don't know. I think the idea of doing vlogs and things like that on YouTube is really stimulating for me to do them, because it makes me, I don't know, sort of take a sort of a fly on the wall perspective of my own life and who I am, in a way that is very different from just like blogging, because I used to do blogs when the kids were younger, and I would do like, what we did today and that kind of stuff. But doing the vlogs, especially now that the kids are older and I'm focused on mostly other things, my own interests, and I've been enjoying doing those, and I think it's really, I don't know, the whole YouTube community can be really interesting, and the fact that we share so much personal stuff online, it's kind of weird, but it's also become really normal. But it gives me a chance to do stuff like this, where I'm just talking to, like, who am I talking to? You know, I'm doing this thing, and what is the point? What is the purpose? Why make a live stream for some people who you know, and then a lot of people who you don't? And why put so much of your personal life online? And, you know, just a lot of interesting questions that brings up. But I don't know, I still think it's a really cool thing, even though there's that part of my brain that says, oh, I need to limit social media use. Or I guess maybe it's just the mindless thumbing through that I want to kind of cut down on, and just go to the things that I really actually want to look at and participate in. So I don't know. This is what you get when I ramble. This is how my brain works. And this is probably a good thing, but I was thinking about how slowly I work when I'm talking, which is the same as when I'm driving. It makes me drive slow. But talking while I'm working on art also makes me go a little bit slower than I normally would. But it's good, because if I were going really fast, you might not really be able to see exactly what I was doing. So you can see as I come down and finish each of these sections, I attach it and hold it in place by tying a knot onto here. So it's like you're going across this way with the knotting, and then coming this way, and that ties it all together and holds the whole thing into one piece. You like those hand gestures? That's all technical stuff. Oh, and when people, I've had people out on my artist page on Facebook will often ask, what is that technique? Where did you learn to do that? And so one thing that I would suggest if you want to learn how to do this is not the best tutorial. Me standing here just doing the work and talking is not, I don't know if that's really the best way to learn. But you can go on YouTube and just type in macrame knots. And honestly, you will come up with so many tutorials. So many. Cabandali macrame is another term that is used for more micro work. Now, this is not technically micro macrame, but it doesn't look like micro macrame, but the actual technique is more closely resembling that, because with like with the macrame wall hangings, like I was talking about earlier, that you think of like, from the 70s or whatever, you tend to be using like a much thicker rope, and you can see each of the individual knots, and that's part of what creates the look of the macrame, because you can see the knots, you can see the square knots, and you can see the individual ropes. And with micro macrame, you're building up a surface using usually smaller threads, and so you're not seeing each of the individual knots. It creates a whole. It creates this. And so you're not looking at each of the knots that I've made. You're seeing this particular sculptural effect that was built up by using the knots. So that's really a big difference between the macrame that people think of and the cabandali or micro macrame knotting techniques, because it's building something more sculptural, even if it's not creating sculpture specifically, if it's making necklaces or bracelets or whatever, it's more of the whole effect as opposed to being able to see the individual knots. So that's what you can do if you want to know how to do this. And like I said before, knowing a technique doesn't mean that every single person who does that technique is going to do the exact same thing. This is a very easily broken thread, as you can see. And so I do that sometimes. I'll get to pulling a little too hard. So what happens when I do that? Okay, that doesn't really, it's not the end of the world. All I do is when I come back through, I just pull that in just the same as I would if it hadn't happened. In fact, right now I can just go in here and grab a string from the center, which is something that I will do anyway quite often. If the knotting that has been coming up through here, you can see this lines up with that. Can you see that? This lines up here, and sometimes it won't. It'll be a little further down, so I'll just do a few knots to just pulling from the core. That's all I'm doing. I just took a string from the core, and I'm going to get that little fuzzy broken piece of string and pull it in and just make another knot around it, and trying to hold on to that little tiny short string at the same time can be a little tricky, so that it doesn't end up on the other side of the knot, which I think happened down here when I had this little piece. See that? I'll have to come back and cut that off. I'm kind of hesitant to cut it off right now because I can't really see what it's connected to. Yeah, that's fine. So anyway, that's how I can bring this more in line with that and also pull in a broken string. Just do that one more time. And have that. Anyone who is still hanging out there with me, you're a hero. You can say hi. I'll say hi back. All right, let me adjust this a little bit so that it can still be in the camera view, but also allow me to have my arms in here, because sometimes the tripod legs get in my way and it limits my ability to knot. We don't want that. Okay, there we go. That's good. Let me get a little bit more light. Ow. Light hot. Okay. So I'm hoping to bring this all together and end this section. I think maybe that's what I will do for the end of this video, or that's how long it will be. I don't know. It's a time-consuming process. It's definitely not something where you can just be like, oh, hey, I'm gonna go make this thing real quick. I'm a little mixed up here with my strings. See which one's next. This one. These purple ones have all gotten together. There we go. So I'm taking this blue one. As you can see, I'm ready to bring this one in, and that will close the gap a little bit more. So I'm bringing that into the center and then pulling it down, making a knot. So that's my goal, is to try to finish this section. But like I was saying, it's this very slow process, and it's not quite as slow as when I'm talking, but it's still quite slow. People ask me, like, how long does it take to do one piece? I'm like, I don't know. It takes a long time, because I've never really timed it, but the only time I've really known how long it takes me to do something is when I was really in a crunch for the show and I had to get it done. And in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think, in the last 3 weeks I did the 2 pieces. Might have been in the last month. I don't know. Sometimes I'll look, if I can't really remember things, I'll look back and look at pictures that I took during the process and look at the dates on them, and that will help me know a little bit better about where I was in the process and when I got finished. So it gives me a good idea of how long it took me to make it. So, but if I really put in like a good 10, 12-hour day of standing here working on art and just taking pee breaks and eating breaks, I could probably do one of the medium-sized pieces in a week. So you're talking about a lot of time goes into it, 50, 60 hours at least. Well, so that's the answer, the sort of answer to that question of how long does it take. One day I'll actually time it, but I've never really felt the need to do that because even if I tried, I probably would not succeed. I would forget. There'd be a day I would forget to, write it down, how long I worked or whatever, and I would still not know. Okay. You might notice that with these little purple strings, I'm tying several at one time. I'm not coming through and tying each individual tiny one. I could, if I wanted to lose my mind, I could do that. But instead, I'm gathering. Whenever I add one on, I gather them together to make the knot, because it makes a more dense impact in that section, and I'm less likely to break the string also. But this is super thin. It's like sewing thread. That's how thin that is. So bunching it together, like you do when you're making a tapestry, you put several pieces together to create a color or an effect, or to the texture and everything. So that's what I do. I can hear you tiptoeing. I love that Kira's in here eating breakfast and she's being so cute, trying to be quiet. It's like you can tell when someone's trying to walk softly, and they are, and it's working, but it's funny.
The ground ends up being the loudest part, because
So cute. Kira is here. She came yesterday. She's going to be going with the boys. For those who don't know, my boys, they are in a band. And when I say my boys, they are young men. They are not boys anymore. They're in a band, and they're going on a short tour, I think a week and a half tour. Their last tour, they did sort of a north, they went up into Brooklyn, and I think they went to, I don't know, I can't remember where all they went. It was more north. And this time they're going to go, they're going to Athens and places in Florida. So anyway, so Kira came into town yesterday, and they're going to be just hanging out for a few days before they head, 50, 60 hours at least. Well, so that's the answer, the sort of answer to that question of how long does it take. One day I'll actually time it, but I've never really felt the need to do that because even if I tried, I probably would not succeed. I would. Write it down, how long I worked. Tied that around this time, so I'm going to do a control it takes for me to not scream. So I'm going to just pictures of, whereas if, kind of are just in a situation where